This episode features first-hand accounts from real people detailing their disturbing experiences. Listener discretion is advised.
My name's Dustin, I'm from Chicago, and I'm going to tell you the story of how me and my 3 friends came across the UFO. So this happened about, I would say, 7 years ago. Right now I'm 25, this happened when I was around 17. I believe it happened right after my birthday, so it was early September. I got some BB guns for my birthday, so we decided to go into my friend's backyard. He had a big backyard, and, so we invited his girlfriend and my other friend over, and we were just in his backyard just shooting the BB gun. I went over there around 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We all hung out, we ate pizza, and then once it got dark is when her parents went inside, and then we kind of just pulled out the BB guns and we were shooting around, just messing around. He lived in a 4-flat, so how it worked was there's a huge shared backyard that also leads into the garage, and then there was also in the backyard there was a patio for each floor where you could walk up the first floor and it led all the way up to the 4th floor. We're shooting the BB gun, just hanging out. My friend and his girlfriend sit on the bottom steps, and I walk past them, and I'm like, I'm gonna go get something to drink. Would you guys like something? And I turn around, and when I turn around, I'm facing the garage now, and above the garage I see something that looks like a UFO. I can't really explain how it looks. It just literally looks like what you see in the pictures on Google. It was 3 lights, and it just looked like it was in a circular pattern. I don't know how to explain it. It was just and the lights, it didn't look like airplane lights. They were way too big to be airplane lights. It was just 3 big lights that were positioned where it literally looked like it was oval. I'm looking, and my friend's in the backyard. My 2 other friends are sitting on the porch, and I'm walking up the stairs. So I smacked my friend upside the head, and he's like, "What the hell? Why'd you smack me for?" And I literally grab him up by his shoulders, and I turn him around because he was facing me like he's mad because I hit him, obviously. So I turn him around and I face him towards the garage, and he's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And his girlfriend stands up and she goes, "What do you mean? What is what?" And she turns around and she looks, and she doesn't really say anything. And then my last friend, he comes up and he's like, "What are you guys looking at?" And I kid you not, we all kind of just sat there for a few seconds just looking at this, and it slowly got further and further away. And while it got further and further away, we had to walk up a few steps just to keep it in our point of view. Because once it got so high, it went past the garage, and there were trees behind it as well. So every few, maybe 30 seconds, we would walk up 5-6 stairs just to keep it to where it was eye level with us. So, we're all freaking out, and we're like, what the hell is that thing? And, we're slowly creeping up from the 1st floor where he lived to the 2nd floor, to the 3rd floor, to the 4th floor. And finally, we got to the 4th floor. And, we couldn't go any further. And so we're watching it for about 10-15 seconds, just literally just standing there. It just disappears behind the trees. This was when no one really had an iPhone or, a phone at that point. I mean, I think we had sidekicks or something. So, we didn't really think to record it. We were just in amaze. What is this thing? Did we just see a UFO? We go back downstairs. We head downstairs. We're all kind of talking. We're walking down the stairs slowly. And we go into the backyard where the garage is. And, we're all kind of standing in a circle now. We're all talking what the hell did we just see? Was that a UFO? We're 17-year-old kids, freaking out, what? We just seen a UFO? That's crazy. And, we were all kind of just, not skeptical, but we were all just no one's going to believe us. And I kid you not, we're sitting there for about a minute or two down in the backyard just discussing what we've seen. And a helicopter flies over us. And it's going in the exact same direction as the UFO. And we're like, okay, that's a little odd. Not even a minute later, another helicopter goes by. And we're like, okay, that's very odd. we live in Chicago. The only helicopters we ever see are news helicopters or, like Chicago Police Department helicopters. This didn't have it didn't have lights. It was literally just, you could see the helicopter, but you didn't know, like, it wasn't licensed to, like, the news or, the Chicago Police Department. It was literally just a helicopter. 10 seconds later, another helicopter flies over. And at this point, we're freaking out. My friend, his girlfriend, starts crying. And she's like, I told you they were real. I knew it. I knew they were real. And at this point, we're all like a bit freaked out, but she's just making it super, super worse. She's scaring everybody. We're trying to keep calm, and she's over here crying now. She's basically bawling her eyes out. And she's like, I knew they were real. I knew it. Her mom comes outside, and she's like, what are you guys talking about? And, we're like, oh, nothing. And she's like, why is she crying? And I'm not exactly for sure what they told her mom, but eventually her mom went back inside. And, we calmed her down a little bit, and we're sitting out there for about another minute. Her mom was only outside for, I would say, like a minute or two. It wasn't very long before her mom went back inside. We're sitting there, and I kid you not, about a minute after we finally calmed her down, a plane flew over. And it wasn't just a normal plane. Like, this plane was lower to the ground where you can literally see it. And it was also not just a normal plane that would carry passengers. It was something from, like, that would carry, like, military men. And the only reason I know this is because my two friends, the two guys that I was with that night, said exactly what kind of plane it was, which unfortunately I don't remember. But they said it was a plane from Call of Duty that would literally carry, like, army men. They said that it was like a plane from Call of Duty. I didn't play Call of Duty back then, so I'm not exactly for sure what kind of plane it was. But they said it was one from Call of Duty, so that really freaked us out even more. And after that, we went inside. We were like, okay, this is getting too real. So we went inside, and, my friend, she got on the computer, and she looks up UFO in Chicago. And, we're sitting in her room for like an hour just trying to see if any news posted about it or if anybody posted about it on Facebook or anything. We're scrolling through everybody's news feed just seeing if someone posted about it. But no one posted about it. So we're sitting there for an hour, and then her mom comes in the room, and she goes, okay, it's getting late. It's about 10 o'clock. You guys need to go home. So me and my three friends, we were already discussing it, but, we didn't want to go home, like, alone because we all live separate ways. So eventually, I called my mom. I asked if my two friends could sleep over, and we all rode our bikes to my house. On our way to my house, the whole time we were just looking over our shoulders just to make sure that none of us got abducted, basically. Like, I know it sounds really silly, but at that time we were so scared of, like, going home alone or just anything. It was a very scary experience. And I know, again, it sounds funny, but when you see a UFO and then you see, like, 5 helicopters and then you see something, like, out of Call of Duty following it, like, that you must have seen something big. And so now you're just, you're freaked out. You're looking over your shoulders. And for, like, the next 2 days, it was summer. So I think we just, like, I don't think we went to school yet. We started school, like, maybe a few weeks later. So, honestly, for the next 2 or 3 days, my friends just stayed over my house. And basically, that's all we could talk about. We were watching YouTube videos every night on UFOs. And, like, I think for that, like, next 3 days, we literally were just in my house after, like, 5 o'clock because we didn't want to be out after dark because we were so scared. And we were watching every YouTube video. We were just watching, looking up everything on Google about UFOs. And to this day, like, what's crazy is I'm not the only one that remembers this. Like, I can literally text my friends right now and say, hey, do you remember when we seen that UFO? And every one of them is spot on to exactly what we've seen. Like, they all have the exact same story. So that's how I know that, like, this isn't something I imagined, or this isn't something that, like, wasn't that big of a deal, because we're all still, whenever we talk about this and we still get scared. Yeah, that's the story of how when I was around 17, I ended up seeing a UFO with my 3 friends, and how to this day, 7, 8 years later, we still talk about it and we're still freaked out.
So I was probably 17, 18 years old at the time. I grew up in a small town. There's not really a lot to do besides, kind of drive down Main Street or just drive around in the middle of the night. Well, a friend of mine, her mom worked at a local attraction called Turner Falls. And so we went out there one night. It was kind of late, and her mom let us in the gate so we could just drive around and check out the campsites and, just hang out, just normal, stupid teenager stuff. So we're driving around, and it's a good-sized park. It's mostly for camping. So you have on the lower levels, there's swimming pools and waterfalls and stuff, and then the higher up you go, the more rustic it gets. So we had driven almost all the way up to the top of the mountain when we came on this campsite. And every campsite we had passed on the way up there had lights on, lanterns going, a fire going, people talking. You could tell that people were there because it was only maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock. So it's not super late. People are still mostly awake. When we get up to the very top campsite, and there's just one tent set up there. There is no fire going. There's no lights lit. We honestly thought it was abandoned because we didn't see anybody. We didn't hear anything. So we decided, well, this is kind of weird. Maybe they've left. Let's go ahead and turn around and come back. I pulled the car forward just a little bit so that I'd be able to back into the campsite and then go back down the mountain. And when I turned around to look behind me, there's a man standing there. And, when we had pulled up, we didn't see anybody at all. And now there's this man, and he's just got his head cocked to the side, and all we can see about it is that, it's a man head to the side. We can't make any facial features out, just completely black. And so we're okay, so he's not moving. So I turned the car to go forward again and drive up kind of onto a wooded area and managed to get the car turned around. Well, as I'm doing this, he's following the car. He's walking right behind us. Still in the same posture. His head never moves. He never says anything. Just in pitch blackness, this guy is following our car as we turn around. We get turned around and to a point that I could kind of speed the car up, and I just took off. I pedaled to the middle, got out of there. When we looked back, he was standing at the top of the road that led to the campground. So he had followed us a good, quarter mile from his campground to the top main road to watch us drive back down the mountain. It is very creepy. If he would have said something or maybe not just stood there, it might not have been so creepy, but just standing there looking at us and then following our car when it's just two girls kind of alone up there that late, it was a lot of red flags going off. All the windows were down because it was a really nice night, kind of warm out, and my car didn't have air conditioning, so we had all the windows down, and it was dead silent when we got to that campground. There were no insects chirping, nothing, just complete silence up there. And so when we saw him, I said, hey, is everything okay? And he didn't say anything. He just continued to stand there. And when we went to turn around, I was like, man, what are you doing? Why are you following us? And he still didn't say anything. It's we're talking to him and he can clearly hear us, but he just remained quiet and just followed us until we were able to leave. But the craziest thing was we get down to the front gate, which is where they let everybody in and give the permits so you can camp up there. And we tell my friend's mom, hey, there was this really weird situation up at this campsite. And she asked for the campsite number, so we tell her. And she looks it up and there's nobody listed as staying there. So the cops go up there to check it out, and by the time they got up there, everything was gone. Tent torn down, car gone, nothing up there. To even get in the park, it's got this long, winding kind of driveway, and there's only one real entrance. So to get in there, you have to pass by a check-in gate for people to check you in. So somebody walking up there probably wouldn't have been checked in. But even if they were, once the park starts shutting down for the night, the cops usually go around and make sure everybody has a camping permit. So the cops had already been up there earlier in the night and no one was set up. So sometime between, quiet hours hitting, which was 8:30, 9 o'clock, to when we went up there, someone had set up a whole campsite. And then from the time we left up there and drove back down to the bottom and talked to the front gate, they had packed everything up and left. The craziest thing is, and I can't, directly tie it to this guy, but it's a weird coincidence that shortly after that, there was a cave, up near where that campsite was. And it was just kind of one of the attractions. You can go and hike into these caves, and they've got small pools and stuff in there. And shortly after that, they found, a bag of, dead animals that had been murdered and, tortured kind of stuff. It was pretty gruesome, so we had the cops out for that. Not even 2 days after we had gone out there and saw that guy at that campsite. Since the cops didn't know who he was, we never were able to find him again. Both my friend and I ended up working at this park right out of high school, so she would work maintenance, and so she would go all through all the campsites and stuff, and I worked down in the souvenir shop. So we would go all through it, and we've never had anything else like that happen again, but that one time was enough.
A couple years ago, we were doing an overlanding camping trip in our older SUV with our rooftop tent on top of it. And we were going from ghost town to ghost town in Montana and camping in between. So we were going up to Garnet, which is a little ghost town outside of Missoula. And we decided to come up the back road in the dark, not a big deal, and go above the town and then camp and get up in the morning and go in. So as we come in, there's a weird abandoned car parked in the park's parking lot, the state park's parking lot. And I feel weird about it, but I kind of just shake it off as, that's weird. Why is there a car here? Who's parked at, 10 o'clock at night, hiking through a state park, whatever. But I tried not to let myself get too worked up. So as we drive up, we start to feel very uncomfortable. The energy in the truck gets pretty uncomfortable, gets really tense. My husband and I start bickering, just kind of nitpicking at each other. Our dogs start pacing in the back and panting and whining and being real edgy. We keep going up the back, and there's things there's abandoned houses that clearly are from the mining era, abandoned trailers that people were living in, some small sort of temporary houses that are clearly from the mining era. And I sort of got this creepy feeling that we were being watched. So I maybe just thought, maybe it's just locals, who's driving up past our house this late at night. So I glance out the window, and I see two red lights right next to each other. And I don't want to say that they are eyes, because I don't know. I didn't see what it was attached to, because I looked away very quickly. So it could have been reflectors. It could have been, I don't know. I don't know what it could have been, but they were glowing, not necessarily reflecting. So I looked away, and I thought, I don't want to see what that is. So as we get further up the mountain, we find a flat spot, and the dogs at this point are going nuts. I mean, panting, yipping, drooling, pacing. I can barely catch my breath. And I thought maybe the dogs were just ready to get out, but they just have never behaved that way. And, you know, I've had these animals for a long time, and I know their moods. And so I started to get this weird feeling that we were being stalked. So it went from being watched to being stalked. And I've caught some flack for saying I had the feeling that, but I'm a woman, and a lot of the ways that I have stayed safe is when I feel like someone is following me. I deal with it. I acknowledge that feeling, and I've stayed safe. And so I know that it may sound silly, but I felt like we were being stalked and hunted. And the best way I can describe it was I felt like there was a werewolf. And I don't necessarily know if that's a thing. I don't really believe in werewolves. But it was just the best way I can describe it, like a predator and prey situation. So my husband goes to get out of the car, and I grab his arm, and my knuckles are white, and my face is white. I just, he looks at me like I'm a crazy person. And I said, please just don't turn the lights off. And he said, well, I have to turn the headlights off. I have to see if the tent's level. And I went, please don't turn the lights off. And I just had the feeling that once the headlights came back on, either he wouldn't be there and I'd have to figure it out on my own, or that something would be there with him. Whatever I had seen or whatever I had felt. And eventually we agreed to leave the dome lights on. And so I asked him too, I said, okay, well, can we not let the dogs out? Can we just give it a second before we let the dogs out? And he said, sure. So he gets out of the car, checks it all out, gets back in, and everyone is still kind of losing it. And he just looks at me and he goes, we're not staying. And I said, no, I'll be fine. He went, no, we're leaving now. I didn't argue that because I was pretty terrified, and really inexplicably terrified. And we go to make our way down the mountain, and we decide to go on the main road because it's faster and it goes straight to the highway. As we're going down, it starts to snow. It hadn't snowed at all leading up to it. It's snowing pretty white. We can still see, but it slowed us down quite a bit. And as we're going down, we're not speaking, we're not talking or fighting. It was like there was no air left in the vehicle. I had that kind of lump in your throat when you have a panic attack. My face was hot. He wasn't talking. The dogs were still losing it. As we're going down, out of the front passenger side of the road, a hare streaks across the road, and we hit it. I, cringed, and it broke my heart, and my husband was like, I couldn't stop. I can't. He actually said the words, I can't stop. So we go down. We go into Missoula, go to the other side, camp on another mountain, and everything's fine. And pretty much immediately after we hit the rabbit, the mood completely shifted. We were nervous, but we weren't scared. So we come back the next day. We're in the parking lot up by the ghost town itself. And a ranger pulls up, and we're sort of rehashing everything. And a ranger pulls up, and I am talking to the guy, kind of sharing what's happened and how I felt. And the guy kind of laughed, and he went, I wouldn't stay up here by myself at night. And this is like a young 20-something guy, probably pretty tough. But he said that, it kind of made my stomach drop. And he said, I want you to tell Ranger such and such down in the town what you experienced. Because I told him I felt like we were being stalked. I felt like it wanted to eat us. It was weird. So we go into Garnet, and we're talking to the other ranger. And I tell him specifically what I say to him. Because he says, how did you feel? Which I thought was really peculiar, because it wasn't, what did you see? What did you hear? He said, how did you feel? And I said, well, it felt old. It felt like it had either never been human, or if it had been human, it was a long, long time ago, like its humanity was gone. Because I just thought, like a werewolf, that's what I would say about a werewolf. And I told him I felt like it wanted to eat us. And I said, I know that sounds ridiculous, because I thought a serial killer or, a crazy person. And I said, I thought it wanted to eat us. And he just said, have you ever heard of a Wendigo? I said, no, I don't know what that is. And
The Wendigo is a mythological creature from the folklore of the First Nations Algonquin tribes. It's described as a monster with some characteristics of a human, or as a spirit who has possessed a human being. Although descriptions can vary somewhat, it's commonly viewed that the Wendigo is a malevolent, cannibalistic, supernatural being.
So he kind of goes into it and he tells me what they are and the lore and so I was like, that's it. That's the best way I can describe it. That the myth and the legend, the lore, the sort of traits of it describe exactly the way it felt to be up there. And so subsequent to this experience, I've done my own research on it. And I found that they are not in Montana, but apparently there are creatures like that throughout all American Indian legend and lore. Doesn't matter if it's the Pacific Northwest or the Southwest or Canada. There are beings that fit that description. So that was really eerie. And then I get on Reddit and I'm looking stuff up and I'm talking to people and I share my story with someone on there, and they message me and say, I did some research too. And it turns out that Wendigos can control the weather in order to stalk their prey. It's just very coincidental that it would snow as you're trying to get away. And so I thought, well, that's real spooky. That's creepy. And then I'm talking to a family member of mine who's done some research in spirit animals and animal guides and things like that in congruence with American Indian legend and lore. And she informed me that rabbits, in a lot of lore, are either the spirits of Indian soldiers, warriors, protectors, or harbingers of safety. I just thought that was so strange. And then I remembered, because I thought, that's what a strange coincidence. Then I remembered that as we were driving back up, we came back up the road that we had left on. And it was freshly powdered snow. No tracks. Not even ours. It had snowed over ours. White. The road was white. There was no rabbit. There was no blood. There was no entrails. There was no carcass. There were no drag marks. There were no other car tracks. There was nothing there. We stopped and got out. We looked around, and there was nothing there. I got really freaked out by that, and I just thought that I don't know if it sacrificed itself to the creature. I don't know if it was an American Indian warrior protecting us. I don't know, but it was incredibly uncanny. I then was looking back through our photos of when we stopped in Bannock, Montana, and it was a few days before we had gone to Garnet. And I had several photos where there was a hare next to the buildings that we were in, or outside or walking around. And so I don't know what to think about it. I don't know what was there that night. I don't know what was there protecting us or keeping us safe. But I know that when I spoke to the second ranger, and he described what a Wendigo was, after he told me that he was an archaeologist, gave me all his credentials, because I was like, yeah, right, whatever. I have never felt more sure about a paranormal experience in my entire life. And so it's one of my favorite stories because it's very specific. And the more I dig through stories about that area and people there, and people in modern day there are a lot of stories that are similar to mine. Even a few where people have seen humanoid creatures. Take with that what you will, but it was really very intense and very nerve-wracking, and I hope to never have to experience it again.
You've been listening to Disturbed. Special thanks to Dustin, Brittany, and Mary for sharing their stories. You can see more information, photos, and sources on our website, disturbedpodcast.com. If you enjoyed this episode, help us grow by sharing the show with a friend or on social media. And make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening so you always get the newest episodes automatically. If you have a few extra seconds, drop us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to support us and get some awesome perks, check out disturbedpodcast.com/fan-club. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Disturbed Podcast. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode.